I've worked at schools all over the world, and there's a very simple way that you can tell if your child's school is innovative, and that's furniture.
Furniture? How so?
Well, furniture represents how we think about what needs to happen in our classrooms.
What does a school that is innovative look like?
Desks and groups, where we're thinking about group work. Our desks are laid out in groups, or horseshoe, where we're encouraging classroom discussion and discourse.
Or even, let me be so bold, no desks at all.
Ooh. I love that. and you know what's interesting is that holds true even in resourced and under-resourced, because
For sure.
that's almost the really, really cool thing. It's not about like
How nice
expensive furniture.
Exactly.
It's about the organization of the furniture, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by MacKenzie Price. MacKenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
Previously, it made sense for education to be political, right? Like if it was the way you indoctrinate the way your nation needs to think for nationalist priorities. I think we're moving into like a really, and like that makes sense as a product for an industrial society. We're like move to service economy, where there's more choice, there's more self-actualization, more all of this. Then what are the principles by which we need to organize our education system? Becomes really tricky. And always flow of funding is one thing, because money is censorship ultimately. Funding is censorship. Like if it is a national priority to promote a certain agenda, that is the curriculum that will go into your schools.
Sure.
And what gets funded, those are the programs that get funded. And it comes back to those questions. What are our goals? And what do we value?
Yeah. Well, okay, so tell me, because you're spending a lot of time in schools in the U.S.
Yeah.
What would you say you're seeing? What are the goals of U.S. education right now? What is U.S. education valuing?
I could not answer that question.
No, too big.
Too big, too fragmented, different. Every state has so much nuance and difference. The one thing I can say is I think that since COVID, there is a very, very interesting movement in microschooling and just the desire for parents to choose their children's education and get involved in it.
Are you having more success with getting your app into those smaller micro schools?
Micro schools and your international schools. So where people are focused on global skills, communities, curriculums.
You know, we should talk about micro schools a little bit because, I started out as a micro school.
Yeah.
We started out with 16 kids. We've got schools that I've continued to launch. I've got several different school models right now, and they always start small because really the best way for schools to grow is just organically, word of mouth, great experiences. And yet so many parents are unhappy with their kids' school experience, but then they'll kind of, when I'll say, hey, look at a micro school or do this, they often go with well, we need a bigger school. We need a bigger school. And one of the things that I want parents to understand is that there is so much richness that comes out of the experience where kids are in an environment where they're being encouraged to learn and they're challenged and they're getting, I think, even a better socialization experience when they're in a crowd with 10 kids. 15 kids. You don't have to have hundreds of kids in order for the social experience to happen.
Can you maintain 100 friendships?
Exactly. Well, it's funny. That's one of the other things is, right, people are always friends with, 4 or 5 kids. Now, in a couple 100-person school or bigger, you get to pick which of those 4 or 5. But I actually think that's one of the conversations with parents all the time is like when you're in a smaller school environment, you have no choice but to learn how to get along and learn how to connect. And one of the things we've seen with the cultures at our schools is that kids they respect each other for what they bring to the table and they honor them. It's your South African word, Sambora. They honor and respect them for who they are versus in these larger environments where it's like, oh, that kid's a nerd. They're the jocks. Those are the cool cheerleaders, and they start identifying people by cliques. And so I think if there's a parent listening out there, understand like there are a lot of options in your community. I guarantee you there are micro schools, or you can start a micro school, and do that. But, it takes a lot more. So I'm glad to hear that you're having luck with those kind of forward thinking groups.
I actually ran a micro school in South Africa. It was one of the only ones. So I ran a project-based learning school that did forest school and stuff. So I feel very connected to that. I helped 2 moms run their school. Mm-hmm. And part of it, a big thing was taking learnings from here and trying to apply that in the school we ran back home, where there was literally nowhere else. But I think what's so interesting about this idea of socialization in big schools, when you're in a small school, there is one jock, one nerd, one geek, one, name the navel, one hacker, one misbehaving, or maybe all of them are misbehaving.
It's almost, have you seen The Breakfast Club, that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, it's exactly that. That's like a little microcosm of a high school experience. Yeah. And guess what? In the end, they all connected and got along.
And they all have to get together. Mm-hmm. The thing I think we're missing is that kids today growing up online are so used to big socialization. Mm-hmm. Like socializing with big groups of people and one-to-many types of experiences. And yet our young girls in particular are lonely.
Mm-hmm. Very lonely.
And why? Because we're lacking meaning and connection. And that's where schools are fundamentally failing young people.
Teen mental health is in a complete crisis level. It's terrible. And they're spending their time online, but they're not really being connected, right? And then it's at these big schools, you're kind of an anonymous person, right? You're in this thing. So it just goes back to my general point. I think there's such a rich atmosphere that can be cultivated when you can bring people into a small community where they really are seen and recognized for who they are.
And I think there's something so interesting. Like I often say, like, we're and this is the risk of AI in many ways. So AI, everything, like AI music, AI apps. So hyper-personalization comes at the cost of shared human experience. If not done right. So if everything's hyper-personalized, right, we never have anything that connects us. Because we watch, like we used to watch TV, everyone waited for the episode. Yeah. And we would go to school and you would be like, did you see the episode that came out yesterday? And we'd all have something to there's almost organizing, or a football game, or sports, or whatever. Those are shared experiences, and people are craving those experiences. Church, bring people together. And modern society is losing that.
You're right, because we're all watching exactly what we want to watch, doing exactly what we want to do, and that could be completely different in our own house. Yeah, we can be sitting there watching 4 different things on our iPads and have zero connection around what my daughter is watching or what my husband's watching even.
Yeah, and so we actually need projects, and I think projects are going to start, and I think micro schools are the places where projects are going to start thriving. Young people are going to start working together on projects. I know you guys do projects in your high school.
Tons of projects.
And
all over
the
our
most
schools.
Incredible things. And that is a way for people to connect, to work together on things. But the thing is, if it's a silly project, like building a rocket, with no disrespect to the science teacher who recently did this project, but like for a high schooler to be building a rocket out of cardboard boxes is no longer meaningful or satisfying.
Right.
Especially when the media you're consuming as a young person is so rich.
Yes.
That's the other problem with education apps, is that they're often so underwhelming to the consumer media that young people are ingesting all the time. And that's another reason for disconnect.
That's another thing that I was just having this conversation with one of my friends whose kids go to a ritzy private school in Atlanta. And she was talking to me about my schools. But one of the questions she had was like, well, what about labs? What labs is your school doing for their science things? And I kind of thought about it and I was like, think about how many lame labs there are in schools across the country, right? It's like, let's pour some of this into this and watch a little fizz going on, especially when now you have the internet where you can go and watch some amazing video that really explains what this experience is. And I was having this conversation with my oldest daughter, who's now a freshman in college, and she's having to do a lab for one of her science things. And she's like, Mom, it's a 3-hour lab, and we spend most of our time sitting there waiting for the professor to come over and approve our next step in the lab. She's like, this whole lab thing is ridiculous. And you know, we've completely changed at our schools. We don't do traditional labs. We'll do other things, but I think it's such a great point of there is such rich material and learning that you can do. And now just like, let's go build a rocket, you know, here, or let's like put this computer together, or let's mix these two potions. It's like, And
we're fundamentally missing the point.
We're
missing
What's the point?
The point is to help young people connect to things that they care about.
Yes.
Because that's how you move people to take action. And we need young people who feel empowered to action things.
Yeah. So that gets us back to your app, Mindjoy. You built an app. A lot of people want to build apps.
Yeah.
Tell me how you did this and what was the hardest part?
I would say we're still building.
Okay.
And we work really, really closely with educators. So we want to hear, we see educators as our co-conspirators. And we see them as allies. But the actual people we want to really, really double down on are what kids want.
Yes, I love that.
And so we know we're winning when kids are winning and using Mindjoy a lot. And there's two components, like you said. We've got the app, but we also do small group learning, like online learning with the students too.
Okay.
And that's really interesting. So it's almost like getting together and almost learning meta skills, which is like, so how do you use AI to help you learn?
Now, is your app available for people at home to use, or is it only within a school environment?
Not yet, but we're starting to get so many parents sign up. We've actually got a little drop down that if you are a homeschool parent, you can say that and we will sort you out.
I love that.
So we're currently just figuring out how we can do that. But yeah, we really are focusing on great pedagogy, like what makes a great teacher. And what's really interesting with the science of tutoring is that what we're starting to understand is it's less about what a great teacher does and more about what a good student does.
Tell me about that.
And so what we're learning about in terms of thinking about how we build Mindjoy is we've stopped focusing on what we call tutor moves, and we are focusing on student moves.
Student moves. Tell me about student moves.
So what are the patterns or the behaviors of a student that is unlocked?
Okay.
Right? What do they do? What kind of questions do they ask? How many questions do they ask? Mm-hmm. And what we see what we can see in the data is that you can identify basically an unlocked student. They feel confident enough to ask enough questions and get the information they want. And they're starting to riff with the AI.
We call that one of our schools that we're creating is called Unbound, right? Yeah. It's like we allow kids to be unbound. They're no longer going to be tethered to this pace of a classroom curriculum that goes forward. They are unbound.
They're boundless, for sure. And so what's really interesting is then to say, what are those moves? So we can see, for example, question types. We look at question types and we say, what types of questions are the students asking? So most students start at like sort of procedural definitional questions, like what is this? How do you do that? Why is this the way it is? Why is actually a secondary question. But so you start with like your procedural questions and then you kind of scaffold upwards in terms of, well, are you debating? Are you steel manning and straw manning? Like how do you use the AI? Like can you ask for different perspectives? Are you becoming an editor with the AI?
Yes.
So you start looking at the student moves. Does the student check the AI system? Like does they say, are you sure that's right? Because I actually work this, and so you start seeing the student moves.
That is such a fun thing to do because I have sometimes found myself, I'll get in arguments with my AI. I'll be talking to Claude, and then I'm like, no, this is not what we're trying to do. Especially, where AI is crazy, is I'll often use AI to like, hey, we are going to be doing this event around education, and then I'm like, here's what we are, here's what this, and if you do anything that kind of knocks too much on traditional education, AI will come back and be like, nothing's wrong with our schools are great, and then I have to prompt it like, get over your political whatever of this and just pretend for a second that schools are broken. Let's now talk about what kind of marketing event. No, it's crazy. If you do anything that the AI gets offended if you try to hammer something, or it's like, hey, we have a school with no teachers, or did this, it'll come back and be like, well, teachers are inherently critical to any model, and so I'm not working with you on this project. And I'm like, I like teachers. It's the system. Can you help me now? And I mean, it really is crazy.
But this is the interesting thing, to come back to education and technology and the intersection of that, right? This thing that you raise is something we think about so much. And come back to funding and censorship, right? Again, who are your big organizations? What are their beliefs that they inculcate? And do we only want one system, or do we want a society of AIs, right?
Yeah.
I don't want just one AI. I want a society of AIs that represent different views and perspectives, so that back and forth is not just inculcating one set of beliefs or values. And that's really, because this is interesting technology in terms of thinking tools.
Well, and that's the key thing, because, people often, you can't trust AI, which I agree. There's a lot of things you do. And so like in our schools, we have contained this where we're using this AI tutor to basically be able to efficiently understand what's the pace that a student is learning at. Are they engaged? How do we help them? Are they reading explanations? Are they, not doing that? It's not saying, ChatGPT, please teach this student math, right? We're using the core curriculum. But the other thing that we're trying to instill in our students is exactly what you mentioned, which is they've got to be great critical thinkers, so that they can recognize when they say, wait a second, let's talk about this and let's try different things. And on my computer, I have multiple AI apps up all the time, and I'll ask Claude this, and I'll ask ChatGPT, and I'll ask this, and I compare, and I'm trying to understand what that is. And that right there is the skill that we need to teach our young people.
Yeah,
is how to be critical thinkers and how to use this AI technology, a lot of it for different
100%.
reasons. So I love the idea that you're able to track through your app.
Yeah.
Like, how is a student engaging, and what, are they unlocking that next level of understanding?
How helpful is that, right? To get an insight, being like, hey, that conversation, you did really well. Because this is actually what I find. I don't know if you've heard the term dialogical thinking.
Tell me what dialogical thinking is.
Well, could you guess what dialogical thinking is?
I could imagine maybe that it's more interaction.
Possibly, maybe something that looks like
where we like go back and forth.
Yeah,
we're like tossing a ball and thinking about cool ideas, right?
Yeah, and you can think of it like kind of chucking a ball back and forth and building an idea together.
And what are some of your favorite ways, like, to think of new ideas?
With other people.
Oh, yes.
Or AI.
What is didactic thinking?
So didactic thinking is when you have an instructor explaining the exact material or ideas or explanations, and they're trying to convey, and it's actually getting harder for me to keep explaining it because it's just so boring.
Thank you. What are most schools today employing?
I think most schools are still employing didactic thinking. And if they're moving towards innovative approaches, they're approaching dialogical thinking, but it's not yet something that's a common word in our pedagogical toolkit. There's something really interesting about this. Well, dialogical thinking taps into the idea that learning is fundamentally a social phenomena. Mm-hmm. So that most learning is actually social. Like, you don't think about how you learn to talk, right? You just learn to talk as a baby growing up, right? Modeled from the world around you. And that's essentially dialogical thinking. It's a social learning. But so, yeah, we do just assimilate things, and sometimes you do need to get to like maybe truth. But I think that there's a fallacy there, in that we think like the truth, a great explanation is really useful for building that mental lattice and understanding of how things work. But the scientific process of creating new knowledge is about questioning.
Yeah. And we can use the transfer of information into a person's brain can be done in so many other ways besides just sitting in a lecture, hearing this information. And then if we allow kids to read or watch or listen at their pace, they're able to do that better.
And build and create.
Mm-hmm. In today's classrooms, so many teachers are complaining that kids are not disciplined.
Because they're disconnected. And I think that we need to help young people work on things that they care about. And when you care about something, you will be disciplined in your pursuit of getting great at that thing. And I love the Jocko Willink thing. Discipline equals freedom. And so you only want to be free to explore the things you care about. And therefore, it's imperative that we get meaningful projects and work into our classrooms.
And when students are connected, then discipline is not required by the teachers.
Exactly, because it comes from the student.
At our schools, we help kids find that intersection between their passions and talents. And when kids find that, they put their own discipline into place.
Right.
What's going to happen to society if children today do not become more disciplined?
I think we'll have a society that lacks ambition.
Aren't we already there?
It's not too late if we do something now.
That's why we need to revolutionize education.
Agreed.
There are so many schools that are failing, and I think we are putting so much of the blame on teachers.
Yeah, we focus too much on teacher moves, what teachers are doing, and we focus too little on student moves. And that's something we need to be looking at, like what do great students do and how do we help every student become a great student?
But parents seem to think that's the teacher's job.
I think we need to bet more on our kids and make sure it's their job too.
Let's talk about unschooling.
I think traditional schools have a lot to gain from the unschooling movement in the emphasis of a child's ability to self-direct and teach themselves.
But there are some dangers.
Right. I think it requires a very invested parent or adult or grown-up or mentor or coach to really facilitate that kind of learning, which is incredibly resource intensive. And that just doesn't scale very well.
So unschooling, yes or no?
Maybe. We think through discourse.
Yes.
And like Plato often said, when we started writing things down, he was concerned that we would lose our ability to think through
dialogue
discourse
with each other. Yeah.
As a child, because I was dyslexic, I really struggled with writing. And so my mom was always advocating for me to use computers at school, and my school was like, no computers. And she was like, she's dyslexic. Like
you do have some beefs with your old school.
Yeah, I know.
I can tell.
I really need
I think
to go.
there's some trauma there,
Yeah.
Gabi.
I have some childhood trauma in my school.
You definitely have some childhood trauma on your school.
I bet.
Actually, you know what? I have some childhood trauma with some of my school, and I'm going back to my old high school in a couple of weeks, and we're doing a tour of the high school because I guess they're going to blow it up and do something.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to visit. To visit those old classrooms, be like, oh, I remember that ridiculous English class that I had to take or whatever. It'll be really cool to get to see it before it's destroyed.
I will give you a challenge when you go into your school.
Okay.
All right, so this is a game I play. You ask a question, how do you know if a school is ready for innovation or not? I have a really simple test.
Okay, what is it?
You look at the way the classroom's laid out.
Ah, well.
Dead giveaway.
Of course.
First one board in front, rows of desks or groups of desks.
Of course.
Orientated to the front of the classroom and the teacher in the front. You know it's still a traditional school with
you-
didactic.
You know what's funny? This is a secret, but I visited a really high-end private school in Miami, Florida, and they took us on a tour, and we went into all these classrooms, and they were really cool. I mean, they were beautiful. There was one that had like a petting zoo, a whole thing, and they were very much kind of more grouped, like they looked like more what our schools, not quite as cool as our schools, but they weren't desks. And I was like, oh, this is really nice. And then we were leaving and saying goodbye. And then I was like, oops, I have to use the restroom. I went and I walk into this other building and I look in the classrooms and they were all standard desks, teacher in front of the classroom. And I was like, oh, they don't show that part on the tour, do they? But it was so interesting.
But they showed the lab.
They showed these things, but they didn't show. And I mean, it was really kind of a crazy thing to see. And then this was the other thing that was crazy. I'm waiting outside of the gate for my Uber to come. And I'm standing there and all of a sudden I hear someone go, MacKenzie. And I'm like, I look and there's a car that's driving up, and it was somebody who recognized me from Future of Education.
Wow.
I didn't know them, and I was like, oh, hi. And they're like, oh my gosh, I follow you on Future of Education. I was like, oh, and they go, I go, wow, the school's beautiful. We just toured it. And she goes, well, we're going in to have a meeting with the administration teacher because they're completely failing my one kid and the other kid is a mess. And they're like, things are not as you see. And I was like, that is true. I saw that with the desk in one classroom and then the like cool looking thing there. Yeah, I'll be excited to see what my old school's like.
Yeah.
Tell me what a school that is ready for innovation, what does it look like?
Red flags to look out for. When you ask a teacher, how do you think about innovation in your classroom? And their answer is my smart board. Then you're like,
Actually, you know what? This is a really good thing. Okay, tell the people who are listening what are like the questions, if you're trying to understand, what are the questions you should ask? So the first one is you ask the teacher,
all right,
what do you consider innovation?
I will tell you what I actually do. If I don't have kids yet, but if I do, if I did and I was enrolling into school, the first thing I'd look at would be a school's job ads.
Job ads.
And see how they talk about their school to their teachers.
Okay.
Because there is the truest place you will find what is going to happen in the classroom.
Wow.
What the qualification or expectations of the teachers are, and what the school values.
Okay. Wow.
So that would
I
be
need to do that. I'll do that
is
as
my
an
first tip
exercise.
to parents: is go look at the school's vacant roles, and look at that, and look at who's been there and what they're hiring for, and just look at if there is a job opening.
Sure.
Look at that.
Okay. What else?
All right. Then whiteboards, smartboards, whiteboards. If a teacher thinks that is their innovative tool, that is not innovation.
No.
Thinking, the way they think about their classroom and what the job to be done is the thing to be on the lookout for. What else to look out for? So I like to look for classroom, like desks, groups of desks, preferably, or a sort of big
Horseshoe?
Yeah, horseshoe.
Yeah.
That's where you're saying there's conversation, dialogical thinking, this dialogical thinking thing, which is the idea that we exchange and create new knowledge through back and forth.
Versus rows of desks all looking straight ahead.
Didactic thinking, one person imparting knowledge in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And then I actually would have a question around standards. Like, how do you hold students to high standards?
Okay.
I think that's important. I think we think that everything about traditional curriculum, we think that that's a bad thing to throw out. And I think that's a mistake. I think helping young people build discipline in doing hard things like studying and preparing matters a lot. But how that is being inculcated matters a lot.
I would add, though, to that question, I think if you ask a school, you're going into school and like, how do you hold high standards? It's a question that is so easy to just throw platitudes at.
Yeah.
Where they'll just say a bunch of empty words that are like, well, we believe that the holistic style of learning is critical to human flourishing and whatever. And so I would actually say also then grade their answer on, are they actually saying something that's real, or are they just like, we developed the young leaders of the future and it's great.
There you need to ask the follow-up question, right? Tell me what that looks like in the classroom. And then ask the question, so when my child is failing, what happens then?
Yeah. Are they even allowed to fail?
Are they allowed to
is
fail?
there? We never fail. We have no students fail ever.
What support is in place for students to fail? When do I get involved as a parent? Who's there to support?
Ooh, you're gonna be hardcore when you become a parent, Gabi. Those are some good questions.
Yeah, I think it's the follow-ups there. But
Yeah.
I think the standards thing matters, because I think the other failure is the other extreme, which is we don't have standards and every child will just figure it out. And unschooling is for some kids. Very few parents can actually afford to pull that off in a way that
is really helpful.
Really helpful. And I think there's a lot of science and data to support that.
I think that is definitely true.
MacKenzie has a great thing about with the parents where she says support, don't solve. For when a kid has a problem.
Yeah.
Like when they're failing, it's like support them, but you don't solve it, because so many helicopter parents just rush in and do the homework for them because they don't want their kids to fail, and the schools won't allow them to fail.
Yeah.
And think about it. We've talked about this many times, but we all had a friend growing up that was held back, right? Did you have a friend that maybe was held back a grade? And it's not really a terrible thing because it needs to happen sometimes. But is anyone ever held back? Now? Never.
Only for sports reasons. Only to get
they get redshirted.
Only to get bigger, having a little extra time to get bigger. Well, Gabi, it has been so great to talk to you. I love meeting other people who have that same kind of desire to like help unlock potential for kids. And I love that Mindjoy is doing that in the classroom, and that you're finding ways for teachers to transform their role. I wish you the best, and I hope that this comes to classrooms all across the United States and the world.
Thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me. It was so awesome sharing this time with you.
That wraps up this episode of Future of Education. Thanks so much to my guest, Gabi Immelman, who has created this incredible app called Mindjoy. I hope that it is used in classrooms all around the country. If you want to learn more about her, you can always go to her website, mindjoy.com. Yes, mindjoy.com. And if you want to reach out on social media, you can find me at Future of Education on Instagram or on YouTube. And of course, if you have not become a subscriber yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll be back in your podcast feed really soon. Until next time, just remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to help them unlock that potential.
Thanks for listening to MacKenzie Price and the Future of Education podcast. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it, so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with MacKenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back in your feed soon, but until then, remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to unlock their potential.